Today's episode was just so much fun. My guest is Eileen Durfee. She's a health pioneer, a businesswoman, and an innovator who has reinvented a way to distribute natural healing products to protect others from toxicity. Okay, so Eileen, background, she was a former nuclear power plant engineer. She was very sick her whole life, and I'll let you tell that whole story. And using her kind of, what would you call it, inventor brain, she just kept seeing this is what I love about engineer brains, and I'll say this in the episode, so forgive the repetition, but like their minds are wired in such a way as to like, what is the problem and how can it be fixed? What is the problem and what's the most efficient and effective way to fix it? And let me make sure it's fixed. And so having someone like that go through her own pain of having all these health issues for so long, she finally was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna find the healing modalities. And then on top of it, she kept making them better. As anybody who has that kind of brain, I'm sure you can relate. It's just like, how can I make this better? How can I make this better? So she created a company. It's called Creatrix Solutions. And it's so cool. Wait till you hear the stuff that she did and how she got to that place and why she changed things the way they did. We're going to be talking about anything from infrared saunas to ozone to coffee enemas, so much. Don't miss the part at the end where she's talking about the S curve of the spine. That was really cool. Phototherapy, just so much cool stuff. And just hearing her experience with all of it and how it impacted her she's just great. You're going to love her. She's fun to listen to and just really appreciate her. And she's worked with some really incredible people since then. And yeah, she's just amazing. So let's go ahead and jump in. Here is Eileen Durfee. Okay, Eileen, I'm excited to share your story because even though it has its specific facets, there's so many people who can relate on different levels and they don't know that things are going on with their health or like where it's coming from. So can you tell us what brings you to the show today? Just kind of share your journey in health.
Well, I've been sick my whole life from the time they ripped me out of my mom with forceps. And obviously I had some fascia issues when I was in the womb because as I grew, my hips were twisted and one knee hit the other one every time I walked or ran. It was really clumsy. And then and they pretty much didn't figure out. I mean, I had leg aches all the time. They x-rayed, said there was nothing wrong with me, so I'd wear special shoes. And then I grew 9 inches in 3 months and boy, was that painful.
Wow.
And then shortly after that, I got ran over by a car when I was walking in a parking lot. And then it really was terrible because I felt like daggers in my chest every time I would take a breath.
Wow.
I could barely move my arms because my whole thoracic area, my spine just kind of went, like a huge scoliosis curve from the floors. And so, I got into chiropractic care and learned about different exercises. The chiropractic pretty much restored my structure was Dr. Scherger. Now he passed away in 2016, but he had some really interesting things go on with the US Olympic team and NFL teams, which we can get into later. But the next thing that happened is I got a silver amalgam filling when I was like 20. And my health went downhill from there. It was terrible.
Wow.
And I ended up becoming allergic to everything.
And you probably had no idea what was going on. Like you didn't make that connection at that time.
No,
right?
I didn't.
Right.
Yeah. There was all kinds of things contributing. It's like, how many straws do you have on your camel's back?
Exactly.
People think that health is just like a silver bullet. And it's not. I mean, I got toxins from my mom. I got a poor set of genes. Heck, I'm related to the boy that the movie was made about, The Boy in the Bubble with John Travolta.
Really?
That's actually in my family tree.
Wow.
So my mom had health problems her whole life. So, I mean, people don't realize how much toxic metals and junk come through the placenta to the baby.
Yeah.
And I actually just my mom would cut my hair and saved them in a baby book. And I sent all my baby hair off to get analyzed.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Oh my gosh, the toxic metals and everything were through the roof. I was just poisoned.
Wow. I didn't know they could still see it later like that.
Yeah,
wow.
they can actually do mummy hair.
Really? Wow. Cool.
And,
okay.
So I did that, and sure enough, that didn't help matters. And then, just having, thyroid issues and adrenal issues from the stress. I'm from Washington State, where, the Hanford Reservation is. It's the most contaminated place in the Western Hemisphere of the world. And during my mom's childhood years, they just released large amounts of radiation right into the atmosphere. So when she was drinking milk, so there's more people here with thyroid disease than anywhere.
Oh, wow.
And so, having the underactive thyroid, then obviously later on, I found out that I had leaky gut because I became allergic to everything I ate. So then I would do the pulse test because, an allergy test, you can have something that's safe to eat, and then you eat that all the time, and then you become allergic to it.
Yep.
So I had to do the
sees it as a toxin because it's leaking into your bloodstream, and it's like attack. Right.
So then I went to never eating anything from the same family. Like if I'm going to eat broccoli, I don't eat a cabbage or another cruciferous for 72 hours.
Right.
So I did that. Then some doctor said, "Oh, you have candida." So they put me on niacin and ketoconazole, which, that's a drug, and that really doesn't fix the root. I mean, I thought all my evils, because I had psoriasis all over my body. My hair was falling out. I couldn't think. I had chronic joint pain, anxiety, panic attacks. It was easier to say what was working, so I've suffered my whole life.
Wow.
And, so I just had this underlying drive that my body, if it had what it needed, it would heal myself. Right. It would do its job. I mean, that's what it was created for. So I had that underlying faith where I never gave up, and I switched from medications to natural stuff, but I was still chasing my symptoms.
Right.
And now that I know more about, biology and chemistry, you move one element, they all move. It's like a lot of people don't know that taking a lot of zinc will lower
copper,
but it also affects your potassium.
Yeah.
There's just things that move one way or another. And so when I found out about hair analysis, I was a wreck, and it was just one more thing that I was going to try, but it changed my life because I had cabinet fulls of stuff. It's like when you're so sick and you spare no expense at trying to get well, it's just one more thing that you're going to take, like handfuls. You don't ever imagine that one of the things that you're taking that medicated one symptom caused another health problem.
Right.
And that's what I found out is that all of this calcium, magnesium that I was taking to go to the bathroom and to sleep was then displacing in my joints and causing the arthritic pain and those kinds of things. And when I got on the hair analysis, it's like in a month of just taking a lot less. It's like I had to wean myself off of stuff that I was using, to medicate symptoms, because they say, well, that's making the root problem worse.
Right. Yep.
And so then when I got on those, it's like you didn't need chelation, because the body's like all of a sudden thinking it won the lottery. Like, oh my gosh, I
can do this now.
Yeah. And so then I really started getting into detox protocols, and being a former nuclear power plant engineer and seeing things in blueprint form, I'm more left brained. And
totally.
I would just, and I'm a gizmo woman. How many people have a garage full of gizmos that they buy and never use, right? Well, I just use something and then would wish that it was this or that, go to sleep, and I would wake up, I would see it. I would see the new invention. And so then I started patenting gizmos and just making them, easier to use. Because if you have a gizmo that works and you don't use it, hey, that's no good. So I just made sure they're non-toxic, and help the body escort out all these things so we could the body could do its transformation job. because every cell in the body has an enzyme binding site that requires a mineral. And by design, calcium in the bones, right? And people don't realize, but selenium for the thyroid gland, the man's prostate is more zinc. And so when we can get the right elements there, because we can restore the body's energy and, supporting our endocrine system and so on and so forth, then we can begin to restore health. I mean, at 60 years old now, I feel better than I ever remember. I mean, to be able to sleep, to wake up with energy, not to have any aches or pains in my body, and it's just a process, there's all kinds of things to do, from getting enough sunlight in your eyes, to balance your circadian rhythm, grounding, we're indoors way too much. People aren't moving enough. I mean, there's just some things people can do for free that will dramatically improve their health. Yeah. But the main thing, because we can have, natural light, we can have good water, we can have good food. I mean, even organic food doesn't have the mineral content that some used 2 years ago. I mean,
some of them have even lower than the conventional because they're not replenishing. And then the ones that are replenishing, the minerals are too big and you can't absorb them. And I love that you mention hair mineral analysis, because it's one of the core tests that I do with my clients too. And it was life-changing for me also, just in terms of being incredibly magnesium deficient for me. And I didn't realize I was taking magnesium, but the form I was not absorbing the form that I was taking. And so when I saw that and I started using like a nano particle size mineral, sleep, calm, just extreme calm. Because I'm sure, as you know, magnesium deficiency will create anxiety, right? And I was going through a ton of stress. I had been keto, fasting, super exercising, trauma, all of this stuff. I was in survival mode, not sleeping. It's just like magnesium depletion central, and just creating more of this anxiety. Once I got that replaced, then I had this calm in which I could, and I love that you're talking about the ratios matter. The ratio with minerals, the ratios matter. And that's what hair mineral analysis provides us with, is it's not just, selenium's good, take selenium, zinc's good, take zinc. It's like the ratios matter. And I'm so glad you're pointing that out. And also talking about nature. I went to a regenerative farm in Ohio recently. And they actually test the mineral content in their soil. And they went and got some conventional produce from the grocery store and tested it against theirs. And it's like some of them, like selenium you mentioned, 2 of them I saw, just a handful of ones they showed me, 0. They had 0 selenium in them. None. The sodium was way lower. Everything was lower, and so I as much as I would love to be super hippie and I can just get everything from food, we can't now, unless you're some regenerative enthusiast gardener that's testing your soil content. It's just you got to check that stuff now. It's just, we're not getting it the way nature intended. Even the organic ones can be lower in some of the minerals, and so yeah, I just love that you're bringing that all to light. And I love that you have this engineer brain. I love engineer brains. So they're my favorite, because they see how things work and they want everything to make sense. And it's just very helpful. So let's talk about this. I want to talk about, excuse me, your being exposed to in terms of your job. How did you start to figure out what was coming in that was causing problems? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's somebody's finds out they have mold and they're well, that would have been nice to know. Or they're super sensitive to EMFs and they find out there's a tower right next to that. What was that discovery process of the things creating the problems for you?
Well, I mean, I grew up, my dad had a motorcycle shop and a machine and welding shop. So I had been around exhaust fumes when there was lead in the gasoline. I had been around all the welding fumes, all that. Then when I went into the nuclear power plant construction phase, being an inspector and auditor and engineer, you're out in the field. Back then they didn't have fresh air. They didn't care about the workers, know. And so it was, after I started becoming allergic my lungs would close up being around anybody with perfume or anything with the cleaning chemicals. And, now you can go to the store and buy a half a dozen different brands of non-toxic cleaning chemicals that work. But back then there wasn't anything, and I had to make my own. So I had to clean up my interior environment. Because I was just reactive, super sensitive to those things. And so then I realized, I think in the late 1990s, that it had to be something with toxins. So then that's when I got a far infrared sauna. But at the time, I didn't know that it had high EMFs and, that kind of thing. But I was sweating a lot. I did, feel better overall, because I wasn't one of those people that was super sensitive to EMFs. But I made that connection, probably in the 90s. I know when in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was having my children, because I had two boys that were 14 and a half months apart, and then my daughter 21 months later. But during that time of being pregnant and having kids, I lived in a place where we were downwind, where they sprayed pesticides on an apple orchard. And I would get so sick and reactive, from that. But I just knew that it was partly, environmental. I mean, other people weren't having reactions, but I was just super sensitive to it. Now I know from my genetics that my body just does not eliminate stuff. And so therefore these daily practices of the daily near infrared sauna, doing skin brushing, drinking ozonated water, jumping on a rebounder, exercising, and doing coffee enemas and doing supplements, because most people are not in perfect health. The first sign of an imbalance is fatigue. And that means your body's got too many adaptations. And, it's doing the workaround, and the more workarounds that you got, then the more disease symptoms you'll have. So that's like the time when people, instead of like having an energy drink or more coffee or caffeine to prop yourself up, or even those vitamin packets that are, like, really have a lot of B vitamins or something, they're supposedly to give you energy, but you're not identifying what the problem is and how to balance it. And that's the thing. Even if you were some regenerative farmer that had perfect produce, depending on the stresses or emotional trauma someone's going to go through, they're going to have higher needs for certain kind of things than other people. And now that I'm into genetic testing, for instance, I was taking melatonin. I started taking melatonin again when it was known to help, for combating. And so, I wasn't one of the ones that were reactive with it, and I would sleep well. But little did I know from my genetic test and my saliva and my urine testing that melatonin was causing my body not to make any serotonin, even though I wasn't depressed. They're going, you're an anomaly. Well, it's like I do all these daily practices. So I stopped the melatonin. And that's the other thing is with my genetic mutation, collagen wasn't being metabolized properly, and it was going in and screwing up all these other ratios. So I stopped those two things, did these custom creams, and now my serotonin is perfect. All these amino acid ratios are perfect. It's like, wow, we really have to look at the individual to be able to get them, operating, so you're not actually causing another problem that you're having to deal with. It's like so many people are going down this rabbit hole and playing Russian roulette. And that's what I did for many years. And, I can never stop learning. I mean, I just, continue to learn, and I'm doing things because my grandma lived till she was 99. Let me tell you, the last 20 years of her life were horrific. And so as I grow older, like, I was in a car wreck. I've had to have knee surgery. And so like when I do squats and stuff like that, it's like my knees will begin to ache. So, I mean, I went to Mexico and got stem cells. And now I'm back from Las Vegas and I'm back home starting to work out. And, I'm sitting there doing my 200 squats, and it's like, normally my knees would ache. I have no knee ache.
Oh, awesome. Now. I'm glad to hear that was effective for you. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And anybody who's worked with, any of my clients listening or people who know my work well, like you're speaking my language, you're my kind of woman. Cause I do the DNA testing too. And the we process that. And it's crazy what you can find out. Melatonin and is a great example. So like melatonin acts on the same genetic pathway as caffeine. So if you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine, you're going to be a slow metabolizer of melatonin. And I'm curious about your serotonin connection, because like which gene you're testing for that. I don't know if you know off the top of your head.
I don't know off the top of my head. I was tested for 86 of them, and there's like about 30 of them that I have.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And sometimes you have to correlate different things, but it's like, it's so cool to find that out. And a lot of this people know intuitively. Like when I get a slow metabolizer of caffeine, for example, they will almost always say, "Oh, I don't drink caffeine." Like they don't like the way it makes them feel. And then I get a fast metabolizer and they're like, I can crank through that crap like nobody's business. I'm like, I know, and then the normal ones are kind of like, yeah, I pretty much don't have it after noon or 2. It's like, they already kind of know that about themselves. Right. But then when you find out things like that, like, well, melatonin also, so that's why you're waking up feeling groggy and it's not really kicking in fast because you're a slow metabolizer.
But so I actually handle caffeine just fine. And I never woke up groggy from the melatonin.
So you're probably a fast metabolizer, but then there's this serotonin connection. And we know that they're precursors. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I love.
And it's so interesting because every mutation, your body can react 4 different ways. So that we can't test to know whether it's like producing toxic stuff where it's not working at all, or it's just working slower, or it's working faster. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot you kind of have to guess.
Yeah. I always think about that, like with like B6. You can't know if it's metabolizing into the active form P5P in your liver. So you have to look at liver, but anyway, my point is, like, I love that you're talking about individualized medicine, because like people ask me all the time, what supplements do you take? And I'm like, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for you what I take. I take stuff based off my blood, my DNA, my hair mineral analysis, my gut test, so I love that you're doing that. Okay. So you talked about a bunch of things that you're doing, right? Like you did, it's the infrared sauna and coffee enemas and ozone generators. And, and we'll talk about, if you guys like, I want to kind of get into Creatrix Solutions and how this path went for you. What were the things that you were like, holy crap, that completely changed my life? You said hair mineral analysis was a big one for you, like a game changer. What were the biggest game changers for you personally?
Switching the type of sauna to an incandescent bulb heat lamp sauna. Wow. That was huge, because I was taking a daily sauna and I was told by a doctor that, no, you got to go with near infrared only. Well, there's saunas that have little tiny LED lights that now they can say it has near infrared, but it's really not, therapeutic levels and things like that. And so I got some light panels with heat lamp bulbs. And day 1, I didn't sweat as much. Day 2, I sweat more. Day 3, I was just sweating like crazy, but I had this overall energetic, clean, well-being feeling that I never have experienced in my life. And at this time, my son was at the University of Washington doing biology and chemistry.
Cool.
And I says, what is this thing about near infrared? So he sent me a whole bunch of stuff to read. And he says, oh yeah, Mom, that's why we have photosynthesis on Earth. And, it'll just shine the light on your skin, and your mitochondria will produce ATP instead of having to eat food and digest it. If you can get a sauna and do all of it in one, why waste your time doing anything else? So then, of course, the saunas, the near infrared saunas that were on the market, incandescent bulbs, first of all, they use cotton canvas. So there was no R value. So you could never really get it hot enough to really super sweat. And then most cotton is GMO ready. So really you have pesticide in the fiber that are subvolatile organic compounds. But when you look at the chemistry of it, when you heat it up, then they become more carcinogenic, the volatile organic compounds. So it's like, of course, I didn't want to have a non-organic tent. And I didn't like the fact that, it wouldn't get hot and that you had to preheat it. So then I'm sitting there going, okay, light frequencies, light travels at the speed of light. Let's just don't let it leave. So that's when I got the utility patent on the Sauna Fix. It has R12 radiant panels where the light can't leave. So it's like every second you're in there, it maximizes the phototherapy. So then with that little add-on, that was like sweating twice as much in half the time and feeling energized.
Nice.
And so that was the biggest game changer. That's the biggest health tool, for me. Awesome. And then the next biggest, before I got into saunas, I got into ozonated water. Because, when I thought I had candida, not understanding that it was exhausted adrenal glands that couldn't keep copper bound to a protein to make it my antifungal naturally in my body. So I was taking all these antifungals and it would mutate against it. So then when I learned about ozonated water, doing it on an empty stomach, it was acting like an antifungal for me. Nice. But then the candida couldn't mutate against it. So that was a huge game changer, bringing ozone, into my, daily routine and also cleaning the food. Cause it's like, again, taking the straws off the camel's back, right. We don't want to be ingesting parasite larvae for it to have its life cycle in our body, or if our immune system has to fight off extra salmonella or E. coli or listeria, we can clean that up ahead of time with our food and make it safe. So that I think was huge. So yeah, hair analysis, saunas. Oh, but coffee enemas. Oh my gosh. I tell you what. Actually, if somebody asked me, Eileen, I'm only going to do one thing for my health, what would it be? I'd say do a daily coffee enema. Really? That's how much and how powerful that is, because I'll have clients that come in, get their hair analysis, all that. I always give them the 2-week coffee enema challenge. And this one guy, he had like a laundry list of symptoms. He was on various medications for sleep, anxiety, just allergies, all kinds of stuff. And so they came back after their test results, and that guy, 80% of his problems were gone. All he did was do a daily coffee enema. Wow. And I admit this is not something that I have ventured into. I hear people talking about it all the time, especially in the detox world. And it's probably just because I haven't had gut issues or like toxic, it just hasn't been something that's come into my life. So it's interesting to hear your perspectives on it. That's crazy. So you feel like that is the number one thing that helped you. I forgot to. Oh, you're fine. Get this phone off. So yeah, with the coffee enema, that was huge, because initially especially when I had to go up all that excess magnesium and calcium that were screwing other stuff up, and with the underactive thyroid, it's tended towards constipation. Totally. So that just really worked well for me. So you don't have that auto detoxification, and a lot of people have that problem. Right. And it's better to use the right minerals to balance your chemistry and utilize the coffee enema. But my favorite story is about Hitler's army when they were cut off from supplies. They were operating on soldiers without pain meds or everything. And the doctor always ordered a plain water enema. Then one nurse started putting leftover coffee from the pot in the enema bucket. Really? And a strange thing happened. Their pain went down dramatically, so much so that 3 universities in Europe studied the reason why. Wow. They were putting coffee water in rats and figuring out that in 12 minutes, all the caffeine and palmitic acid had gone out of the rectal area, up the portal vein, and stimulated the bile duct. So it increased bile production dramatically and glutathione by 600%. Really? It turns on enzyme systems and all kinds of stuff. And of course, then you have to lay down, and then you don't have bowel control, and you get up, fecal water goes everywhere. It's like a mess. And then people's backs and their knees. And I had this one client who said, I'm going to do them, but he had this bag and he rolled it standing up. So then that got me the idea. I just need to stand up, no mess coffee, Enema Fix with a pump that you can take a shower, Then you can do your fascia blasting, whatever you're doing, in your shower, conditioning your hair. And then when you need to eliminate, just go sit down on the toilet. I mean, it's just like,
this is your gizmo brain,
easy.
your gizmo brain in action.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I did not know that about the bile and the glutathione production. Of course, especially if you're toxic, you got a lot of toxins, like that's going to be freaking huge.
Especially everybody on the DNA who is a slow metabolizer of, the poisons and toxins.
Right.
That will just be a game changer for them, that their health, they'll feel like, people go, well, Eileen, how do you have time to do this, that, and everything every day? I go, well, it turns me into Superwoman. Wow. Where I've got all this energy and no pain. And it makes me feel and look younger. I mean, if you look at videos of me 10 years ago and look at me now.
I know you look so healthy. I'm like, how did she ever have health? You're like radiating. If you guys are listening on audio, like you look so young and glowing and it's like, what? You had health problems? Like that's shocking. The body's ability to heal is really incredible then, because you look like way younger than you are. So that's super cool.
And we make our own skincare line too. And so that was the real dramatic change, is putting that nutrition on, because it's like this transdermal nutrition. It's big, and so we use, the animal fats with organic oils and things. Nice. And, it's like making the light bulb. We really actually have natural deodorant that works, and things that this one client had all these broken red blood vessels on her skin. And she used our anti-aging toner and our anti-aging lotion. And she's had them for years and tried everything under the sun, and they're all gone now. Wow. She emailed pictures and said I had permission to use them. So now I can get those before and after on the website. But yeah.
Wow. Cool.
So everything is everything on my website is someone I knew or in my family or myself had a problem, and we found the solution that's not causing another problem. Because it's like, how many times can you have something like even hair products? It's like I have a tendency to have really kinky hair. So, I mean, you can put a lot of stuff on your hair to manage it. That's like, there's this Yuck app, where you can scan labels to figure out what's toxic. And it's like, the stuff that works is like really bad for you. But, so always having that less toxic aspect, because women don't know it, but between all your body care products and household cleaners, they're getting like 500 chemicals.
I know. It's so bad. I know. Once you clean that up, it's like, it's almost hard to even look at that stuff. It's just like, no, like, why would I, or like your laundry, I just can't, I can't do it. I love the earth too much. I love myself too much. I love my kids too much. Like, I just can't feel good about doing that to us or the planet, it's like going into the waterways and the water system too. Like, no. Yeah. And it's not necessary. And a lot of times it's less good. It's less effective. Like when you switch to natural skincare products, you're like, wow, this whole thing was a hoax. All this chemical crap sucks. It's not even good. We just had somebody talking about beauty products like a couple weeks ago on the show. So, okay, let's talk about this. I love this because I love engineer brains. I love gizmo brains. Okay. So Creatrix Solutions.com, by the way, is her website. Okay. So like, what did you start with the infrared sun? How did this process go for you? You were like a nuclear power plant engineer. And like, what did tell us how this process went?
So my first invention was the Sauna Fix lamp.
Okay, cool.
And then we were just using small closets, and people kept on asking me for tents. Yeah. And so that's when I researched, and I came up with one that was just really 4 foot by 4 foot by 5 foot. You had to crawl in and sit down. Yeah. Then I had this really short lady that flipped the sauna and put the floor against the wall and laid diagonal because she wanted to lay down and take a sauna. So then it's like, oh my gosh, I can make a convertible, like a little transformer. I could give them different brackets, and I could make it bigger and I could thicken the panels so it would heat up enough. And so I have to thank the guy who stood up and rolled his bag. That's what inspired me to do the pump Enema Fix. And this lady who flipped the tent, laid diagonal, she inspired me to create the convertible tent. Then I had Jen Bodner from Yoga Digest. She had two of the smaller tents and she zipped them together.
Oh, wow.
So she could do some yoga. She goes, oh, but if it was only this wide and this tall. Yeah. So that's how we got the hot yoga studio. Then I have Major League Baseball players and UFC fighters and, NFL players that are too tall. They can't do it. So then I made the yoga height extension kit for 13 inches. So even if you're 6'1", you can completely raise your arms up and, and take a sauna. So it's like out of those things, my engineer brain. But the first one was the sauna. Then I got tired of buying ozone generators every year because they put crappy generators in there that maybe have a 500-hour rating. So, like you use them every day. So then you'd be throwing them away and buying a new one. And so I got one and had it made where it had an 8,000 hour generator in it, plus an 800 milligram per hour instead of the 200, like the soda is a 200 milligram per hour. So I made it better to last longer. And then, a lot of people don't realize that breathing ozone gas permanently damages lung tissues. You can't be inhaling over 0.02 part per million. And so I bought that science glass beaker with the bubbler from some company in Canada. And it was like $275. And it had this PVC pipe sticking over here. And it's just, I felt like I was going to break it. And the diffuser in that thing was so crappy because I had my meter to measure how much dissolved ozone. And you couldn't even get it to a decent amount. So then I came up with something super simple, a glass jar with a filter cap that has the pellets in here. You can hook it to any ozone generator. It goes down up there and there's holes up there. So then it completely degasses 100% of the ozone in the air and it's safe. And it'll work on any ozone generator. And that's just sure a lot easier to carry around than that other contraption. And I use a stainless steel medical grade diffuser with pores that are like, I have one that's 0.5 part milligrams, but this one is the 50 to 60. So it will ozonate this full glass of water in like 3 minutes. Wow. I mean, it'll totally saturate the water with ozone. So it's just, one thing after another, how to make it easier to protect us. Oh, and then I was on an airplane and I had a lucid dream because I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't awake. Right. And I saw this little gizmo. Oh, wow. On my tray table. And it was hooked to a power bank like you charge your phone from. And everyone else was coughing and getting sick but me. Now I had an air purifier ozone generator combination that was plasma. And so I got with my engineer. I says, it has to look like this. It has to work on a battery pack. It has to be very light and, portable. Wow. And so we went through that development process. So it makes 4,550,000 negative ions to 1 million.
Oh, okay. So that's what I'm not familiar with plasma air purifiers. Plasma negative ions?
Is a combination of negative ions and positive. And I said that in reverse. Okay. It's 19,100,000 negative ions to 4,550,000 positive. Okay. Like the plasma sharp cluster delivers 15,000 negative ions because their circuit delivers equal positive and negative. And if they go any higher, it makes too much toxic ozone. Okay. So these other plasma generators are different than mine. I had more negative than positive. So it gets the reactive cloud. So it's super good at getting rid of volatile organic compounds and benzenes and formaldehydes and, all this kind of stuff, dust particles, and even bacteria. But I had people telling me, Eileen, I was having an asthma attack and I had the breathe safe at my desk and I just had my inhaler out and I just started breathing over the breathe safe and I didn't have to use my inhaler. Interesting. So now I got like a whole family of asthmatics. They bought 12 of them and they're all using this instead of their inhalers and they're taking it with them like in a crossbody purse because it has a battery pack. Right. And so I sent it off to the lab to find out what's going on. Is it oxygen? What is going on? Because we know it's negative ions and it's clean clean air.
Right.
And it increases background oxygen levels 70 to 118%. Now that was by accident.
Oh, wow.
And so if you look at the reviews on the website, there's people with, low oxygen because of all their lung issues and stuff, going from 88 to 92, 93. They just sleep with it in their bed. Now, I originally thought about it to clean up the toxic humidified sauna sweat because, there's all the European studies that say, when you exercise and sweat, that's sympathetic dominance, that's more mineral loss, where sauna sweat is more toxins. And then it gets humid in there. So then we're rebreathing it. And I'm always concerned about that. So,
totally.
So then that cleans it up. But if you inhale 20,000 negative ions per cubic centimeter, that's the size of a sugar cube, your rectal temperature won't go down. Then your skin surface temperature will be more. You will sweat twice as much. And even after you get out of the sauna, your rectal temperature will continue to rise. This is if you inhale those negative ions. And what do? We threw the baby out with the bathwater. We went from the standard with the rocks, pouring the water over the rocks, release negative ions into the air.
Right.
As long as the metals, because there's also a European study on classifying certain heaters, because depending on how they were built, some of them weren't releasing negative ions, they were releasing positive ions, and people in those saunas were more exhausted.
Oh, wow.
And so the Breeze Safe is also a sauna ion generator that you can keep in there.
You're right. Very cool.
My son, during college, whenever I would go over there, his roommates were into these Glade Airwick plug-in toxic fume,
totally.
They're not air cleaners. I mean,
they're perfume, chemical
they're chemical diffusers.
Plugins.
Actually, the ingredients on the Health and Human Services website lists them as carcinogenic. And so I got with my son and I built this. I'm looking to see if I have a show and tell of one of them around here. But a little tiny thing, the same size, that you plug in, and it uses carbon fiber tips impregnated with some metal. So it makes negative ions, only 32,000, so it doesn't make oxygen. It has some good effects with cleaning up volatile organic compounds, but what it shines at is this little gizmo. I put it in a chamber and tested it. In 24 hours, it gets rid of 99.9% of pathogens in the air.
So little plugins, like little plug-in negative ion generators?
Yeah.
Are those on your website?
Here it is.
That's cool.
I do have one.
What are they called? What do you call them?
Ionic Refresher.
That is awesome.
There's those little, carbon fiber tips. And all you got to do is wipe it down, and clean around the wall. It's like my son had one. They had a cat litter box in this small closet and they had an outlet in there. And, so I gave him this and a Breeze Safe so it would keep the odor down. And so he calls me out. He goes, "Mom, there's something wrong." I'm going, "What?" He says, "The wall is totally black. Did the thing catch on fire?" And I says, "No." I said, "Son, take a rag. Have you been wiping down the wall once a month?" He says, "No." I said, "That's collecting the dirt particles and it's blackened your wall." So it's like, so then he cleaned the wall.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. I love negative ion. I'm all about that. Like, I mean, if you guys are listening and you haven't experienced that, like just get one, try some sort of negative ion generator, try hers. You got all different options here. You'll notice. I keep one like right by me. I have one currently, but like it's noticeable. And if you're a nature lover, if you've ever been walking by like a waterfall area or running water and you've noticed the insane mood boost, and now of course there's like multiple facets to that, also just like observing nature and grounding and all of that. But like that mood boost, that's a lot of it. That mood boost you get where you're just all of a sudden you can be the grumpiest person in the world and they're just like talking your ear off about blah, 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 blah. Like that's it. That's what it feels like, when you get more negative ions in your life. So I love that you created those.
And the reason why, because I always look at the reason why do we have the problem. Right. And that is we're indoors and we have heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. That duct work, the act of pulling the air through the cold air return and circulating, because you're going to have so many changes per hour in your system, it actually strips negative ions out of the air.
Really?
And our body, just like it needs so much water, so much oxygen to survive, or it goes into adaptation, you need so many, negative ions per cubic centimeter to have bodily functions.
Yeah.
And when you don't have those, then you're going to feel fatigued. WebMD says that if you get enough negative ions, it's more effective than an antidepressant. So when you're talking about mood,
totally,
and people don't realize these computer screens in front of me are emitting poisonous positive ions. So whatever negative ions are in the air that my HVA system hasn't stripped out is exchanging and negating those. And so you have to have
I know
these devices that are replenishing, these ions so that your body can run efficiently without having to go into adaptation mode.
I know. I sometimes, like, I appreciate the sentiment, but people are like, oh no, you don't need any of that stuff. And I'm like, do you live in nature? Do you live in a cave and you're like walking around outside and you're like fishing and like for your own food? And like, no, you don't even come close to living like that. And like, just your great example about your air ducts stripping negative ions. It's like, we don't live in a natural environment. So this, to me, biohacking, which a lot of this is biohacking in my opinion, it's just, how do we recreate? I'm going to stay living in my climate controlled box. I like it here. I'm not going to go live outside of my yard, but like, it's like, how do I recreate what I would be getting in nature in my modern lifestyle? I find these things paramount. That's why I'm all about them too, and it's like, once you know that, I think, because I don't know if I find people are like, oh, do you really need that? Do you really need that? And it's like, well, let me explain. Actually, yeah, you're like missing some really basic stuff that your body needs to thrive. And then on top of it, you're toppling, like, imagine, oh my gosh, it makes me cringe just to think about it. Imagine like working in an environment that has no natural light, has like horrible, like those business lights, you're in there all day and then you're just eating like soda and Cheetos and like fast food. And then like going home at night and like it's dark and you watch TV till 1 a.m. and eat more crap. And then, oh my gosh, like
people do that.
I know. And I'm just like, you gotta be so sad. Like that would make you so sad, So anyway, okay, guys, Creatrix Solutions. So it's like Creatrix with an X, and you guys can follow also on Instagram. It's Creatrix Solutions, at Creatrix Solutions on Instagram, or creatrixsolutions.com. Go check out all of her gadgets. Eileen, I love it. I can't wait for my son is kind of your brain too. And I can't wait for him to see all the stuff. He gets all excited about gizmos and creating cool stuff too. Sorry, what were you going to say?
My most exciting passion is the spine, giving people the S-shaped spine. I was in the airport and had a 4-hour layover. So I started like trying to find a Waldo, who has an S-shaped spine? Who doesn't have tight muscles and pain? In 4 hours, I found 2 people. It is epidemic, and people don't realize that the nerves coming out between the vertebrae, if you don't have the right shape, are being impinged. So the organs, no matter how you eat, or all this health stuff that you're doing, is they will not work at optimal levels. And then the body begins, because when the postural muscles fail, the long muscles like the hamstrings will begin to be tight, the low back continue to be tight to keep your head is forward. Totally. Then the body begins depositing calcium on the front side of the vertebrae to kind of like reduce the distance so that the muscles don't have to strain as much. And, when we're born, we're C-shaped, but look at the old people. They're like bent over.
Right.
And so we've got to look for the biohacking community, and I don't see anybody doing it, is to get the S-shaped spine. And I have 5 patented products. There's 5 steps to get the S-shaped spine. And I work with professional athletes. I was just with Jacob Johnson, the fullback from the Las Vegas Raiders. I had him bend over at the hips, had my yardstick, had him turn his head both ways, 10 reps. We only did 4 of the 5 movements. He actually increased 8 inches in reach. His hamstrings were totally loose. And then he could turn his head, rotate it 2 inches more in either direction. And when he did all the exercises, his spine was popping and cracking, and the bones were actually because of the groove in the equipment. It's like a train on a train track. It puts it in a better location. It hydrates the discs, but that's a huge aspect that nobody's talking about. That would be a whole show just in itself.
Wow. Are you saying this is like it's a process or a device that you've created?
Well, here's the neck shaper.
So if you guys aren't, that's the neck shaper thing. I was going to ask you about that.
The iron neck does not put a curve in the back, in the neck. You got to get the curve. If you're already, forward head posture, just strengthening the muscles might keep it from spasming as much. But I mean, we got to get that curve in the neck, and
so for people who are listening on audio, explain what you are showing it the best that you can.
It's like a face piece with a bar. So you look up to the ceiling and then you put pressure on your face as it's chin down. It's like you nod. If you agree with somebody and you're nodding in your spine, that's cervical bone 5. So at C5, that's all the exercise is putting resistance to chin down, then relaxing and then pushing back, because most people's head is not over their pelvis.
Totally.
So when you do that, your low back muscles that are tight and spasming because your head's too far forward go completely loose. And so you can do this with weights. You can put weights on it. We have these rolls that have a special groove. All foam rollers out there crunch the spinous, all of them. Mine has a patented groove, so the spinous floats, and then your body weight is catching the edge of the cushion.
Yeah, that's super nice.
So it's actually segmental traction with your own body weight, and you lay there flat for 20 minutes. Then you got no gravity, keeping your muscles tight, and they loosen up, and you hear your bones crack just laying over the rolls. It's phenomenal.
Wow. Yeah, that's super nice with the groove. And you can get those on your website as well.
Yes.
I'm looking at
those. And then we have
the
the big one, the backtrack. So actually, even if you have ribs out, it'll put your ribs in place. There's no other foam roller out there that does that. Actually, I have chiropractors using it now in their patients.
I was wondering if you're getting those in chiropractor or physical therapist offices, because they would be, I'm sure, all about that. Like the closest thing that I've ever seen is just like those the 2 balls, the peanut thing. Or when I started as a trainer, I made one with literally like 2 tennis balls and masking tape, trying to get that groove in the middle. So it's nice that that's like a way better curvature because it comes in a little closer. So that's
and then
really
the
nice.
Problem with a standard sit-up is you create posterior shear. So we have, like, for instance, everything about muscle development is having absolute tension on those muscles you want to work, right? And so we can, if you're going to move a big object like a boulder and you have a long bar, you put a fulcrum at the bottom, and you can use 100 pounds of force, and mathematically it'll move 500. So what we do is we put the body, because it's like a lever, we arch over this cushion, like doing a sit-up. Your butt's here and your chest goes back over here. Then you put weight on top of the body, the chest, to create leverage. So this has the external obliques completely tight under tension. And you and so it's like 500 to 100. So it's working those muscles. And then the same thing with a pelvic tilt. And this with the leverages.
And guys, you're going to have to watch on YouTube to click over if you're listening on audio, so you can see she's got like a full on freaking spine demo going on here. But basically what you've got is it's like a mound kind of that the spine you're gonna lay back on. Okay.
Think about a sleeping bag rolled up. And you arching over it instead of an exercise ball, because that's the wrong curvature for the low back.
Right.
So basically, if you hold your body taut and you do this pelvic tilt and you put weight on your iliac, it actually creates, because of the direction of muscle pull and the leverage, it shears back L5 on L4. Now, Luke Rockhold, UFC fighter, had that herniated disc. Joe Rogan wanted him to go get surgery. In 2 weeks with that power cushion doing that exercises, we eliminated it.
Really? Wow.
Yes. And it develops the rectus. Putting absolute tension on that. And so it's like you can get, as long as your spine is not fused naturally or surgically, we can get you the S-shaped spine.
Wow.
With all this equipment. And then there's the last one with all these rolls. It's like there's 5 different diameters and 3 different densities. You know, it's after you're 18, your body doesn't put direct nourishment to increase the size of your disc or the ossification and the density of your bone. It's done, and it's relying on nutrition getting in there from you having the S-shaped spine, because then it's like a shock absorber. So then each disc gets pumped, each disc gets pumped. And so that's what brings in the hydration and the nutrition. And so when you don't have that, then it's more compression. Right. Shear forces are reversed. And so then your discs are in degeneration. And so and then they're like a dried out kitchen hard sponge. So we do this back twist, which I have instructions on how to do that on the website. And that gets the blood flowing and it changes the discs to a gel. Then you lay over those rolls and then gravity lets go and you hear your bones crack just laying there.
Wow.
So it's a 5-step process.
Oh man, I'm definitely checking that out. That is awesome. Have you had anybody with sciatica use this yet?
Yes.
Have they seen improvement?
I've
anything to get that exactly what you're talking about. Cause like, it's so hard to get nutrients delivered to certain areas, like your disc, your tendons, your ligaments, so like it's posture. We had a chiropractor come on talk about this. She's like, you're making everything harder on your body when you don't have the correct spinal posture. Cause that's like your whole energy system, all of your nervous system is flowing through there and you're just compressing it and limiting everything. And that goes to your organs, your brain, so I love that you got on this. We need a nickname for you. You're like
an example, L3, that's your lumbar disc 3. If your head is in neutral posture where it should be, it's the muscle exertion is 25 pounds per second. You move 1 inch forward and it goes to 200 pounds a second.
Holy smokes.
And most people are more than 1 inch.
Right. Wow.
It's huge. It's huge.
Okay. Your nickname is the problem solver. That's your new nickname, the health problem solver. I love it. That's why I love engineer brains, because they're like, wait, there's a problem. Why would you not just fix that? Let's fix it. So, wow. It's just like everybody, it's like, I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry that you had to go through all of that stuff, because look, it was like clearly part of your purpose, to be able to bring so much goodness to the world. So thank you for doing what you've done. Thanks for shifting careers and like taking all of that brilliant inventor brain into the health world, because we need it. So thank you so much. And we'll link all this up in the show notes, guys. Creatrixsolutions.com. Eileen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.